Hi, everyone. I will just wait for people to arrive. I'm sure there'll be some, or at least a lot of people who gave these questions to us on this interesting topic will be joining today. So while everyone comes, I'll have a quick chat with Rajiv and we'll introduce ourselves after this. So Rajiv, this topic was very interesting, which came up. We're coming back with Scientific Talk second season this time. And with everything happening on geopolitical side and what's going on, uh, this topic was picked up as one of the most popular topics for everyone to seek some thoughts, conversation, guidance on. And when we put out the questions people would like to get answers for, we got about good number of 10 to 12 questions. So we're going to pick the top five today and try to answer those in the time we have. And then, of course, we'll have live questions coming even as we stream today. So let me get started now. So, hi everyone. I hope you guys are hearing me now loud and clear. And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, whichever geography you are, and those waking up hopefully soon in the US. My name is Ashutosh Sinha. I am a CHRO or CPO as we call it in Seintiv, and the managing partner and CEO of Seintiv as well. Seintiv is a firm which focuses on human capital consulting, and more importantly, we have huge domain expertise on leadership transition. What does it mean in simple words? We love to work with leaders across the world and make sure that they understand where the career is going. And with our coaches and leaders like Rajiv on the show today, and I'll introduce him shortly, and many other coaches we have, including myself, we love to talk to them and see how we could help them pivot in the career direction. If they're stuck somewhere in the career, or if they are looking for direction or simply skill development, uh, we would love to talk to you and help you get ahead on that. But let's get ahead with the show now. So Rajiv is kindly joining us today. He's a independent director on the board of a few companies, and he's also a risk management leader. Earlier, has been a Big Four leader for over 35 years. And Rajiv brings a huge, rich, bounty of experience with him, which has been in the risk management, but also beyond risk management across leadership in the client domain and inside organizations. So, Rajiv, warm welcome to Scientific Talk. I'm so glad to have you today with us.
Thank you, Ashu, and thank you for the opportunity. I know when we discussed about this topic, this is really relevant, whether the current situation or not. But I think the questions, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation and also the questions thereafter. So thank you for the opportunity.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm so glad that we got onto this. So, we'll not waste time. We'll get ahead with the questions right away, Rajiv. And let's warm up the conversation as the people join in, and some people are already in. Is that the top question which you picked up is a leader who is at the mid career stage plus, I would say, and we're keeping the names confidential here to protect confidentiality. So if you have any questions, you can DM my team parallelly to Kriti or Himanshi, or you can write it on the group. We love to answer those questions as well. So picking the first question up, it says I'm applying to multiple roles, but not getting interview calls despite having relevant experience. What are the biggest mistakes professionals make in their CV, LinkedIn profile, job search strategy, and how can they position themselves better to get shortlisted? So there are two questions in this question. One is this leader is applying to multiple roles and not getting interview calls despite having relevant experience. And the second is how could he reposition, restage his CV and LinkedIn profile and the network and strategy to finally make a breakthrough? That's probably what he's asking.
I think let's put some facts, realities of the current times. I think today with experience, and I'm sure you validate that. 70 to 80% jobs get filled by referrals or networking. So while requests on jobs on LinkedIn or else are there, so this actually means you are actually eyeing for a very small space where you're looking to apply for jobs, and hence it's very very important that the approach to respond to these interview requests need to be more smartly dealt with, and a different manner. And clearly, but this is the fact has always remained, your CV, because when you're responding cold, you're not responding to the network. Your CV or your LinkedIn profile is actually your marketing tool. So and also with the advent of AI, where everybody has access to AI to enhance the quality of CVs, even if so it's very important that, and I've always believed AI is an aid, right? What you are is very important, how you present in the CV. So how effectively you make your presentation on your CV, or tell about you on your CV and a profile, is extremely important, because that needs to stand out in the crowd. So I think the question is important. The question is very, very relevant when somebody is asking that how do we present. So it's important that the CV and the LinkedIn profile is telling the right story. Now, maybe I'll take a few examples on, I have seen, and I'm sure, Ashu, you have seen hundreds and thousands of CVs in a career, and at various stages of life. So it's very important, and for the respondent to understand that when I looked at CVs or I looked at profile, what am I looking for? Or what ticks me the most? Or, how do it stands out for me? So for me, it's very, very important that clearly CV needs to communicate succinctly. Now, we are in the time of in shorts, right? People like us also, we like to
Yeah.
assimilate and get the knowledge in the first 50, 60 words. So the opening summary is for me most important. Most important. Is it communicating the right relevance of the candidate? So I look at that. I look at quickly validate the achievements of the candidate. Besides the relevant experience, and I think the other two things which I'm very cautious about personally, and this is my personal choice: has the person held diverse roles? So is it
Mm.
not the same role throughout? Is there a diversity? It's the reason I bring this out very important is that with the change, and one of the key attributes which every professional needs to demonstrate is resilience. Resilience is a must, and resilience comes from how do you have dealt with diversity. So diversity of the roles, and finally, uh, have you held jobs? I know this is the Gen Z and the millennials may disagree with me to some extent, that you may not need to hold job. I'm not saying hold jobs for eternity, but you do need to spend some time in the job which demonstrates you learned, you contributed. So how long have you spent the time on the jobs? And maybe one last thing, which again, my personal view, I hate to see open to work in LinkedIn profiles. Open to work really puts me off. I know LinkedIn has created that, but that's where it is. So this is my thought. But as I said, you've been a CHRO most of your work life, right? Now, what in your view? As I said, these are a few things, but what in your view makes you pause when you look at a CV or a profile?
So, Rajiv, first of all, thank you. Those were rich nuggets. I hope people are listening to this, and this is being recorded, so those who miss it will hear it later. I think 2 points I'll pick up what you said, and then I'll come to my points as well. Is that uh, the fact that the CV needs to show uh, careers within the career, as in diversity in the CV. It should not be like a monolith kind of a CV. And someone like you sitting across the table, I know you've been on interview boards, you're part of, you've hired so many people as a partner. It's important that that is coming out very clearly. And that's a great point you said when you look at the CV, how do you look at it? Second is, you made a huge point there that it should not show desperation, right? Job, I know people go out of jobs. It's very unfortunate. People hit like in my book, I call it Bermuda Triangle movement, where people hit this Bermuda Triangle, everything is happening fine, and then suddenly raindrops come, and you hit a point where you can't take your career further, and that moment is where you get very badly hit. You don't know. You apply, like this person has said, to many jobs. No one calls you. So far, what's been happening is that in the career, mostly people get referred to into jobs. And then comes a stage in life in the mid career where you suddenly start looking for jobs, not used to going out and searching jobs. So that shift in mindset is actually crazy, because looking out of jobs, looking for jobs versus getting referred to jobs is very different as a science and art. And that means that, number one, picking on your point, don't have open to work written on you. Please, please never. It's a great tool, I understand, but it shows desperation. So I'm not really in favor of that myself. I advise my clients I work with on the coaching, people I work with, that I know you think it'll happen, but mass marketing of your CV never helps. And second is that, like anything, the value comes down. The second piece, which I almost get very attracted to when I look at CVs, or even in the past in my CHRO hat earlier, or in interview committees, is that when someone, whatever career stage they are, especially if they're leading things, if they show this, that their CV has this clear direction to their career. What are they doing with their career?
Yeah.
It cannot be like, okay, they could have moved around, they could have diversity in their career. That's very important on projects. But there should be a pointed edge. I call it the spearhead in my coaching, that people need to have a spearhead on the CV. Which direction is the career going in? If the career is like all over the place, it gets very hard for the recruiter also. Forget the interviewer, that's much later, to pick on your CV. So CV is an important tool to market. That's your first instrument, which goes, coming to the second part of the question. If your CV does not have a direction, you probably will never get a call from anyone. If it, a lot of people put X million, X billion, this, that, everything on the top of the CV. That's the latest fashion. And LinkedIn as well. In subheads, people say, I'm a CXO, I'm a head of this, I'm a, this project head, I'm this, and I've led this kind of value or numbers. Don't have that. Have direction to your LinkedIn and your CV both. And at Seintiv, my team works a lot with leaders. We try to advise them. They ask this question: why do we need to change that? That will not speak well about us if we don't show everything there. But then I turn this back to them. You have been leaders. You interview people. You hire people. When you look at a CV, do you get impressed by so many things, or do you see that as a noise, and your brain is not able to pick up? Because as a leader, exactly what Raajeev said in the beginning, there's a short attention span everyone has these days. So magically just saying that this person is great by looking at a pretty CV with the timelines and flowers doesn't mean anything. It needs to have direction. That's very, very important. So that's my pick on this, Rajiv, and hope this will answer the question this person had. I'll move on to the next question here in the interest of time. The gentleman said, I managed to get interview calls. Okay, sorry, this is a lady, so my apologies. She said, I managed to get interview calls, but after 1 or 2 rounds, I stopped hearing back from companies. What typically goes wrong during the interview process, and how can candidates improve the way they present the experience, leadership value, and personal brand? So the question is, how can one reposition themselves, their personal brand, their presence, leadership value, and typically, why do the person, they've got a few calls and suddenly it's like white noise, nothing is coming back from people? What's really going on? Rajiv, what's your take on this?
I think listening to your question, I'm reflecting. We've all gone through this phase, right? It's not new. It's not that we've had every interview as a success. So we've all experienced this, and I have, through my experience, reflected one thing. I think the answer to that question lies with the person asking the question. Simple as that. While I'm not leaving it as simple as that answer, I'll give you a few more tips from my experience of my reflection of failed or unsuccessful. Failed is a too harsh word. Unsuccessful interviews. I think, as I said, you are your best judge. And typically I have realized, and I'm saying this with utmost certainty, that when you feel the gut in your gut that the interview went well, in most certainly you will get a next call. You will definitely get it happens in the gut. You feel in the gut that I feel. Now, and the times when you don't get the call, we typically try to blame the interviewer or the situation. Typically, we find the interview walked in, he or she was distracted or something else. I think yes, that facts may remain because it is your interest more than the interview's interest in that moment. So I think you have to best reflect what went right and what didn't go right. So as I said, you are your best judge of doing that. And I will give three or four pointers, Ashutosh, when cases where, as I said, we've all gone through these phases where we feel the interview went okay. I've had a situation where I felt good. I definitely get a call. It feels okay. Then I reflected what went wrong, why, and I few things which upon my honest reflection realized I'm talking and talking and talking. I'm just going round about. So because I'm uncertain, or maybe it takes me a little warm up time, but I think the warm up happens in the first few seconds, if not a minute, 30 40 seconds you warm up. But if you find your answers are in a very circular manner, not pointed, directed to the question, I feel there. If I feel I am talking more than the interviewer, yes, it is an interview opportunity for the interviewer to know more about me. But I think I find that if I'm talking more, I do wrong. I also find where I am unprepared. I think one of the mistakes we normally do, interview should be taken exceptionally seriously, like any other thing, like every task. It's a, even if it's something which you feel it's a walk in the park, you have the right skills, right credentials, it's the job for you. Don't feel confident. Every interview is different. And preparing for the interview, and when I say preparing for the interview, it's important to understand the company's vision, mission, objectives. It's very very important. I think I'll take the cue from the point, Ashu, you mentioned earlier, to say you have to have a direction spare, right? So they are interviewing you to align with the organization, to help the organization achieve its strategic objectives, right? The strategic objectives may not be listed on the website, but you still have vision, mission, you still know the company. So it's very very important that in your succinct and coherent communication, you align your experiences and skills with what the company is looking for. It's very very clear. Don't have a long lost laundry list. And I've realized that, and as I said, my feel is you know the outcome of the interview in the first 10 minutes. You That is known. Now then you are doing a recovery mode. But so the first 10 minutes of the interview process are extremely important, sharp. And my final point, from my experience, the ice breaking question is where the interviewers tell me about yourself.
Hmm.
Prepare that well. That is your executive summary, which is going to make or break your outcome of the interview, because that statement of the first 60 90 seconds is something which the interview, from my experience, validates. And just to share my one experience, I had one candidate which I interviewed for 2 hours. I had planned an hour for 2 hours, because some or the other, the messages were so conflicting, from the start to the middle, it kept me confusing. But so it's very very important that, that's my personal experience on reflecting upon my unsuccessful interviews. uh, but as I said, these are experiences, we have. And I said, your immense experience of screening candidates, CHRO, and advising companies on candidates when you review and take the candidates forward. I think I wanted to understand from you, what differentiates a candidate who has answered the questions well versus a candidate who gets selected? So,
That's an amazing
how do
question.
you see that?
That's an amazing question. That's an amazing question. I mean, it's a very fine question because people usually come out of the interview. You said a beautiful point right in the beginning of your conversation, right? You get in the gut that it went well, the interview went well, you answered well, and you come out of it and you still don't get a call for the next step
Yeah.
sometimes, right? So, what differentiates between a good answer and a successful breakthrough? One of the things I use, it's all of us love acronyms. So in my coaching, I've acquired acronym called MAT, and MAT stands for M is for mind, A is for track, T is for tap, and I'll explain what that means. And I was in a interview committee just last week, sitting across. I'll just come to the definition of MAT shortly, but I'm explaining my point here. uh, I was sitting with CEO and a chair of the company, and we were interviewing for a senior CXO position. It's a very large conglomerate, and it was online. It was in virtual. It was the first round itself. And during that conversation, I was chairing the panel. I was just kind of being the fly on the wall, but at the same time, I had to help debrief at the end of it. To your point, that question which you said, the first question which was asked, the first ball on the pitch in the interview was, "Tell me about yourself." It
Yeah.
came right in the beginning. And this gentleman who has got 28 years of amazing experience, and I will not say anything more, was really good profile, one of the best profiles I've seen in that hemisphere, in that part of the function. He spoke for 23 minutes. I timed it, 23 minutes on that question, on tell me about yourself. So I went to him later on, more as a friend, and I said, "Why did you speak 23 minutes? Because you lost everyone on that. After 10 minutes, everyone switched off. Maybe a good way should be that go on for 3 to 6 minutes at the most, pause, and let them ask you questions, right? Or deep dive if they wanted to go in a particular area. But if you go from everything, and what happens is all of us as leaders over a period of time, even a 20-year-old leader, I'm not saying 20 years experienced leader, 18 years experienced leader, 15 years experienced leader, or a 30 years experienced leader, all of them are plagued with this virus, I say it lightly, with no disrespect, that it is called the EKD, experiential knowledge dump, again from my book. And EKD is where you have so much experience in your head. Moment a question comes that tell me about yourself, you want to like say everything. You don't, first of all, your brain doesn't know where should I go. So as much as you're prepared, you go in six places to your current experience, your past experience, uh, about this company, what is contextual, what should I tell, which will impress this guy, and everything goes wrong. So let's come to MAT. What does MAT mean? MAT as a concept is very simple. M is mind. Your mind should be in the interview. It should be in the interview. What does it mean? Like Rajiv said in the beginning, hear what you're saying, right? Do not, because sometimes we are saying, but we become deaf here because we're in pressure. We're just saying it. So hear what you're saying, right? Your mind should be in the game. If you go back to a game of sports, tennis or golf or cricket, that's what the coaches say. Keep your mind in the game. Don't just go, if the ball is coming, don't just hit it for the sake of it. You need to know where your answer is going with this. So please keep your mind in the game, which means if you're mindful of your response, then you will keep it, to the point where the answer is required, not go all over the place.
Yeah.
Second is A. A is for attract. Please don't worry about attracting the interviewer, because that's a huge pressure we put ourselves in an interview. How am I going to attract? Now you arrived. Doesn't matter how you're looking, doesn't matter your internet is working or not working, doesn't matter your answers are prepared or not prepared. You are there now. You're playing the game, right? You're in the arena, you're on the pitch, whether it's a batsman who's got out and you come in to take place, whether it's a second set of the tennis tournament, whatever it's happening. So you got to now not worry about attracting someone. Stop that pressure on yourself. What you should be doing instead is making sure that you understand your CV has already attracted them. That's why you're in the room, first of all,
Good point. Yeah.
right? So that's why someone is in the room. And now you need to make sure that you're unraveling your experience slowly like a story to a point where it comes to T, which is tap, where you can tap into their questions, where you're leading the interview, where you're saying, this is what I've done, this is where I have done, this is the data point around it. And I believe in your organization, I've done, like Rajiv said, research about the organization beforehand. I hope you have done that. So say, I heard this about this, and I'd love to understand more about it. So tap into it, tap in the interview, create a conversation. Don't leave it open-ended. Moment you follow MAT, the interview becomes interesting. It becomes a conversation and not a two-way dialogue. I think that's my quick take on this, Rajiv, for people
Yeah.
who worry that why didn't they get a call back and how should they re-strategize or reposition themselves in the market. Any last word on this one from you, Rajiv?
I think just one thing which is a ground rule. I think which we cannot talk more, but it says honesty and ethics is something you have to be. That's a ground rule. It's a given. It's a given. And I'm telling you, to all the candidates, the interviewer is smart enough to find if you're dishonest. They are smart enough to find that.
Very true. Very true. That is very, very important. I mean, I know people like to wing it in interviews, but if you want to wing smartly to the limit of what you have done, not winging it to the to become a. Don't lie about things. Everyone across the table is much more, if not smarter than you, they're definitely very experienced.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Rajiv makes a great point there. I would thank this woman leader who asked this question. She is a finance professional. Thank you so much. We're keeping our entities protected, so we don't want to mention names. The third question is, in today's uncertain business, and this is asked by someone who comes with in the digital tech area. He works with this gentleman works with a technology company. I won't say more. Is today's in today's uncertain business environment shaped by AI disruption, layoffs, geopolitical shifts, and economic slowdowns. And this gentleman has gone through layoff just now by a very large organization.
Mhm.
So, and economic slowdowns, how can professionals build long-term career security, sorry, my apologies, security, stay relevant and prepare themselves for sudden changes in the job market? That's an amazing question.
Yeah.
A lot of things happen suddenly, like you said, these days, right? And this gentleman has got unfortunately impacted by the change. He works with a very large digital tech area. So, what's your thought on this, Rajiv?
And I do not know if the person who asked the question is listening. So I want to kind of apologize if I may sound preachy in my reply to the person, because I can empathize and relate to a point where you have been laid off, and some of the reasons is the disruption as the root cause of your laying off. But uh, let me just reflect and give you just two or three experiences from my side. I think the career security is not with the employer, it's with you. So I think that's a ground rule. For you to ensure career security, it is you, it comes from you, and from you means your skills, your network, your brand and reputation, and what your financial cushion is. We'll not talk about the financial cushion, but it is very, very important. It's very important that you build that financial cushion, because if you have the financial cushion, you feel secure. You feel secure. So, in my sense, these are the four parameters, and obviously we can elaborate on each of them in great depth. So, when you're talking about skill, it's talking about skill is that you need to make sure that the career security today is about compounding your relevance. So, skill links to relevance. How relevant you are today, how relevant are to the organization. And if I may make a little controversial point, and as I said, I do not know what seniority this the question from the person asking the question is, but I do find one thing which needs to change, because in the mid management mid management level, they are still like to work offline. I think it's time we move into real hybrid with 50% offline, 50% online. Today it's all about humans, it's all about relating to individuals, right? So when you relate to individuals, you are in the face of your colleagues, in the face of your peers and your seniors. It's important that you can emulate and reflect who you are. So I strongly urge to my kids, who are in the millennial zone, to say they like working offline. I said it's time offline is good, you have to accept offline, but sorry, online, but you need to move to offline. Embracing AI as a co-pilot rather than a threat. So gaining, and in fact, this question I was intrigued when I was sitting in a seminar of 100 people, and the speaker asked us to raise hand, who all of you are AI certified. There were only two hands which raised, and these are all people with 50, 60 in the 50 plus bracket who were sitting in the room. They said, who all are AI certified? Just two hands. I think understanding the power of AI and how you could leverage the power of AI is very, very important. Building resilient capabilities. So, again, I think, Ashu, to your point, working in diverse fields, showing that you can do multiple type things. You're a solution provider, not just a finance professional, for example, right? And let me expand that. If you were a finance professional with analytical skills and ESG, just complement your skills. So, which is why I'm saying today, upskilling for relevance is the game. So I will raise just one last point before I have a very important analogy on to flip on to you. So one is clearly building your relevance for today and for tomorrow. So upskilling, agile skilling yourself is very important. And what is also very important is that build a network. Build a network you can bank upon. You build network in good times, not when you're hunting for a job. And as management team members with 20, 30 years experience, you build a network, and that network, nurture the network, because network comes to help you. So your personal brand. And final point, think about this: what are you known for? Ask that question frequently, because that you need to reskill yourself, because what you were known for yesterday may not be relevant today. Keep asking that question to yourself: what are you known for? You're known for in the market, in your peer. So that is where the relevance comes very, very important, for my point. And I have lived that principle. What am I known for? And I have always believed that if I have to secure myself, it's very important that I become relevant, so people, my peers, my bosses know what am I known for, what am I bringing to the table as my contribution. So that's very important. As I said, I have a flip question to you, linking to that. In fact, I was thinking about this, and while talking through, we do talk about people feeling afraid and worried about this disruption, which is causing the careers to, in some degree of jeopardy. But it also puts pressure on the leaders to retain good talent. So I'm saying it's a different question. So I'm just trying to reflect upon you in the disruptive world. What are leaders doing to retain good talent?
So it's a very good other side of the coin, Rajiv. Good question, and it kind of goes back to what this person is asked, that how do they uh, be retained, in other words, in the organization in this world of layoffs and disruptions which are happening. um, Coming to your question, I think what leaders really look for, to retain talent is, I think the primary thing is relevance, right? While the question itself asks for how do one stay relevant, but the leaders are looking for relevance to the organization. Every
Mhm.
organization has a life. Every organization also has a CV. What's the CV of the organization? If the CV of the organization is being built every day towards a certain direction, with the board, with the management, with the leaders are driving, it's a small, mid, or large global organization, that CV is being written real time every single week. It's a
Mhm.
product company, it's a tech company, it could be a services organization. Why are they rewriting the CV? They're not rewriting the CV. They're building the CV, because what's happening is the playoff around them is changing. So in that CV now, if they're writing it, they require people who can also work alongside them, who are part of the play, and who therefore what it means is that if you need to be retained technically, if you are going to be valuable in some, so retain means you're valuable to the organization. Valuable means that you are someone who brings a certain level of value every single week in a way that doesn't get stale, which means that if you are getting stale in the organization, I'm going back to Rajiv's point, how are you making sure that you are upskilling, lateral skilling, side skilling, or picking up new projects? Skilling doesn't mean that you're training yourself all the time. Skilling could also mean new projects. People who join late, they may not know this, but earlier we said in the first, second question, every career needs to have many careers. You have diversity of careers within your CV in your career. So that's resume building. That's your own resume building. Now, if your resume and this other resume of the organization combine, then you're rowing in the same direction. You'll be valuable to the organization. In very simple words. So what it really means is that every leader, every growing leader needs to ensure, every senior leader needs to ensure that they're staying very relevant by taking on projects every two. The lifeline should be every 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Please It's not about changing the job. It's not changing the job in the organization. Don't get too comfortable. There's a frog story I often talk about in my lectures, and it's a very well-known story to everyone. Is that sometimes the frog, and to all the animal lovers, my apologies in advance. I'm not talking about a real frog here, but it's just an analogy here. I never did this, but if you put a frog, let's say, in a kettle, and the water gets warm, theoretically speaking, the frog will find very nice and comfortable to stay in the warm kettle of water. But then the kettle starts boiling soon, and the frog finds it too late to jump out of the kettle. Now, what's really happened is you get so comfortable and cocooned in your daily work that you don't switch it, you don't change it. And that's what staying relevant is about. So let's make sure we do this. For people who don't know, Raajeev, few of the leaders, we, as part of the Seintiv Executive Career Advisory Program, we meet a lot of senior leaders all the time. We talk to them to help them navigate their careers as much as we can. We can't give anyone jobs, but our mission is to make sure that we can take them closer to a job, right? If you lost one, or if you're in your organization where you're doing today, the opportunity which you're doing, how can you maximize that opportunity? Like we're discussing, how can you make it so good that you will shine in what you are today? So talk to us if you're looking for any advice on that. We'd love to give you there. About 6, 7 of us who are extremely good, from a perspective. I'm being very proud about it, but I'm saying good because we have actually worked with leaders for many, many, set of experiences, zones, and places where functionally they're different, but we understand the troubles and pains which people are going through. And I would say one thing as we wrap this question, come to the next question is that please never ever get too comfortable. That doesn't mean you get nervous, but please make sure that you're building your next, even where you are comfortable, before it's too late. Okay. So going to the fourth question, for young and mid-level professional, this is someone who is about 15 years experience. Uh, what skills, mindsets, and career strategy will be most important to succeed, remain employable, and stand out in the upcoming AI-driven era, or even generally the shifting era? So this person is Raajeev, is a finance practitioner. Is Just to give you a context, and is a mid to senior level finance practitioner with a mid-sized company. And he's saying, for a young mid-level professional like me, what skill, mindsets, and career strategies will be most important to succeed and remain employable and stand out in the upcoming AI era? So the shift of AI, like everyone every day says, things are shifting, changing. How should this person stay relevant?
Yeah.
It's a similar
No, again,
question for a mid-level person.
again, and a great question, and let me, as I said, we probably have touched upon some of the skill elements in the earlier part, so I'm sure I'm not going to repeat that, which is data AI fluency or data literacy, which is a skill which every professional needs to have. I think it's a given. It's a given that you cannot avoid that. But I think let me touch upon maybe three or four such skills which actually help you make more resilient to again, going back to the point of how do you make yourself resilient in this uncertain world. It's very important and how you stand out. I think one is your power of communication. I know I don't want to talk about things which probably are well known, but the communication and storytelling is exceptionally important in terms of how succinctly you are able to communicate the message. So having a strong communication skills is very, very important for you to stand out. Today, a professional needs to embrace ambiguity. That's a very, very important thing. Very, very important. Now, because the fact is, who knew Iran war will happen? Who knew? Right? That's an ambiguous situation. You're not prepared for it. So things are not more planned. So as a professional, if you are embracing this, you're embracing ambiguity, or developing comfort with ambiguity, not embracing, but feeling comfortable. So, for example, if you are given a task and not given a clear direction, but a task with the end to achieve, you should feel comfortable about it. So developing comfort in ambiguity is another skill. We spoke extensively about being an agile learner, which means recalibrating your skills and assessing are you relevant for today and tomorrow. So looking at the skill. Uh, I've also felt it's very important that embrace discomfort as a signal. And I think Ashu, you touched upon that point. Pick up engagements and tasks which are out of your comfort zone. So if you are doing things which are out of the comfort zone, you will stand out because you have shown resilience and embrace the discomfort. And maybe the last point, or re-emphasizing the point, uh, or maybe without, it's very important that your network is very important.
Very
Network.
important.
I think it's
Very
very
important.
important that, because your colleagues or your network is where that gives you that cushion. And my I have benefited a lot, and I encourage, if you have not chosen a mentor, choose a mentor. Find a mentor who's independent, objective, because we normally find mentors within the organization. I've never found those to be objective, because they are in the organization. They will always have their organizational self-interest. So find somebody who can be your true mentor. And I really feel for mid-level and young generation people who are building their careers, these are a few skills which I think will help them a lot. I'm just wanted to flip this to you, Ashu. What mistakes you think are young professionals doing today while trying to trying to future proof themselves? So, what do you think the professionals are doing wrong?
That's a great question, Rajiv. And one more thing I like to add on the previous point, however, also is that you said it. You said some amazing things there. One of the things about network, which you touched on. I want to touch on that briefly and then come to your question because it's linked to the question you asked itself. Um, a lot of times people ask you and me and other coaches and other people, what is network, right? I mean, is network LinkedIn? Is network the people we know in our office before or now, or friends? What is network? Network is, and this is my definition, but I believe a lot of people agree with this who are like minded. Network is the warm set of people who will stand up for you when you need them. Now, that's a very bold statement. If we loosely define the statement a bit more, if we kind of make it slightly more loose, what it also means is network is a set of people who you may not know every single day, but in your degree of contact, where you are able to reach out to them in times of need, because you have also helped them in their times of need. So it's quid pro. Network is not about sending a message on LinkedIn saying I want a job, or saying that hey, I got to know you. If you are today in your work being the other side of the network, not ignoring all those messages, if you I know very amazing HR leader. I don't want to take his name, but when I say, a lot of people might be listening may even know his name. I saw that he has this huge, and I know one chairperson of a company also, by the way. She's also amazing. People have, they respond to every single message or email which comes. They don't sleep in the end of the day till it's been answered. Now, some of those questions, and imagine the kind of things we may be getting. Some of them may be standard answers from the EA, but some may be like real voluminous, real making sense answers. What it does is when you do that, even as a normal professional like us, it creates a sense of value to the other person. They say that, hey, listen, this person listening to me. So network is about listening to each other,
Yeah.
creating that value for each other, quid pro, and it creates a real network, right? Now, coming to Rajiv's question, what does the young person do today to make sure that they are they're very valuable in where they work, where they operate, and they can continue to further their career in that direction, in that sense? I think and I've just paraphrased that question in my own words, but Rajiv, excuse me for that, but please stop me if I'm not answering the question. I believe that one of the biggest things the young professional needs to do today is first of all, to make sure that he or she is not just working for himself.
mm,
I'll let that weight of that statement rest. I think a lot of times, unfortunately, fortunately, it's not a judgment, it's not a good or bad situation. But sometimes there's so many distractions, generally speaking, it's so real that our young professionals have nowadays versus what I had probably at that career stage, which you are today, is that you are sometimes not listening to everything around you. You're so caught up in yourself that you're working for yourself only. Now, you may ask me that why is it bad that if I work for myself, right? No, in a capitalist world, completely okay for you to work for yourself. So I'm not saying that become a saint or do good things. I'm not. That's not where I'm going with my answer. What I'm saying is, when you work for yourself, please also take time to understand the context of where you're working and why you're working. It's
mm.
not about opening a laptop, finishing the code, or finishing the day's service deliveries, or finishing a project, or whatever you might be doing, and shutting it and saying, "Okay, I'm done with the day." Right? It's very important that you understand that are you adding to the bigger picture? I said earlier, every organization has a CV. Is your CV adding to the organization? Whether it's a new job or it's an old job, doesn't matter. So in the same way, if before you shut your laptop for the day, take a moment, take 30 seconds to think, did I add value today? Because I promise you, if you add value, you'll be noticed. But there's one more thing after that: projection. So a lot of people say, who generally do add value, that hey, I'm not even noticed. Like I'm invisible in the organization. What really happens here? Yes, it does happen. A lot of leaders find themselves invisible, that they're not being noticed despite of the good work in the job market or in the organization. The answer is very simple. Are you projecting yourself right? Are you positioning yourself right? So one thing I and Rajiv and other coaches at Seintiv, we often tell people is, hey, projecting doesn't mean talking about yourself, bragging about yourself. It means a sophisticated way of letting the world know, which matters, not everyone, what good work have you done. And then what Rajiv said, what are you known for? I also use a different word for it. It is POA. What is your position of authority? What is your position of authority? Whatever career stage you are today, which is nothing but what Rajiv said. What are you known for? Where are you the go-to person for? So if someone says, for this thing, go to this guy or this lady or this woman, this career professional, wherever, just go to this person. That is what you're the go-to person for. And that's not about just work, but it's also beyond work, where you build a reputation in the industry ultimately, where you are the POA, the position of authority on that. And when that happens, it doesn't have to wait that you are 50 years old or 45 years old. 35-year-old can do that very well.
Yeah.
And I know many who do that so well, so well. So that's where I rest my answer, Rajiv. Three things: get a POA right, make sure that you are reflecting in context of what you're working when you shut your laptop every day, starting to the bigger picture. And first of all, make sure that you have the courage to project yourself to the market. That's very, very important.
I think I just want to add, it just came to my mind because I learned this through my experience. Always act as if you're the owner of the business. When your actions are driven as if you're the owner, not an employee, trust me, your manner in which you deal with situation will make you stand out. So, without elaborating more, I think this is where which I want to end that. Actually, we have quite a few comments. Do you want us to take the
Yeah.
comments, or should we go to
Let me
questions?
let me look at one of the quite a few comments and questions coming through. Before I go, there's at least six questions there. I'm not sure we'll
Yeah.
run out of time to answer all questions, but I want to look at the comment here. Questions. Can we put up the question here, please, from the LinkedIn user? So, what frameworks do you personally use to evaluate long-term versus short-term career moves? What frameworks do you personally use to evaluate? Okay, good. I think what it means is, I always love to look at the question behind the question. The question is really saying is that if we are sitting as a leader in the organization interviewing people in, how do we evaluate that person's long-term or short-term career moves? Uh, you know, and what kind of framework would we think this person is uh, adding value, or is it too many moves or something like that? So where does it become of less value as a CV, as a profile? Uh, I think that's what this is saying, Rajiv. That's my understanding.
Yeah.
What's your take on this? Or if you want, I
Yeah, I
can go
think
for.
nothing more to add. I'm in line with what you are saying. So I'm just saying that, yeah, I agree with it. Nothing more to add on that.
Yeah, I think, Rajiv, if I look at the long term and short term career move here, this question which is saying is the framework which I use typically, Rajiv, would be that when I look at CVs, if the short term career moves are justified, now a lot of times they are justified, but in the justification within the short term career moves, there has to be also a pattern, first of all. So there are two, three reasons usually I see people say. One could be personal reasons. Something wrong happened, unfortunately, in the career, or they moved the country, something on the parents, something else happened, and the short term career move happened because of that. Or organization structure restructuring happened, someone got laid off. Understandable situations, right? But there are too many of them. At
Yeah.
least, I saw a CV which has got 18 career moves, right? In a span of 30 years or 28 years, actually. Now, 18 career moves in 28 years, if four of them happened together at a certain point in time early in your career, and last 10 years you've been stable with only two career moves, it's still okay with me. Because that shows that, there were reasons why that happened, but now you're a person who's kind of holding on. But if you continue to move every 2 years or 6 months, 9 months throughout your career, I think that's a framework that CV doesn't stand. Trust me, guys. I mean, whoever has asked this question, due respect, any interviewer uses a lens where they get biased against that CV. Even before the interviewer,
Yeah.
actually, even the recruiter gets biased against that CV, because people want stable people to the extent. Now, if you're a contract person who works on contract every 3 months, 6 months, then that's a different question altogether. But I'm talking about full-time jobs here. So that is a very important thing to know. Long-term career also, I want to flip it. If you've been in 29 years in the same company, that also is a good and a bad. If you've been in the same company for 29 years or 17 years of 20 years of your CV, or you have a 15-year-old CV and you've been 14 years in the same company, it's not bad. It's a very good thing. But there's a bad side to it as well. The bad side is that, have you moved around? Have you had diverse careers within the career in the
Yeah.
company? Have you taken up different challenges, different projects? I know of leaders who are very successful today across the world, and who have moved across. They've been in the same company for 20 years, but then five different assignments, six different assignments during the time frame, and that makes them very valuable. So that's the answer I would give to this. Any other questions we have? Any quick one? People can ask their questions confidentially
I
if you're
quite
shy.
I
That's
quite
also cool.
like Suja Joshi's question because it's quite relatable. So maybe at some point, because I experienced this, so I really got caught up, Suja, with your question. How do professionals position them for opportunities in organizational cautious? I've had situations like this where I wanted to pivot into a new role because I was very excited, and I got into the role, and organization gave me the opportunity to do that, but with a cautious okay. So I had a very similar situation. I think it's very important. Sometimes we get so emotionally attached to what we want to do, the new opportunities, we don't feel the organizational larger objective. I think we need to understand that what when we want to position for opportunities, new opportunities, we need to present those opportunities which align with the larger organizational objectives. If what you're positioning to the organization doesn't align, either in terms of materiality, it's too small, and in the uncertain world where there's a P&L pressure, you don't want investments, you don't want firm to make investments, then don't position that. Or if it is an investment which will largely lead to a long-term growth. Long-term means 5 year down the road growth, and hence that investment needed. So, right positioning of the opportunity and unemotional. It has to be unemotional about how you feel about that. So, as I said, I really like this because I went through the same dilemma at one point in time, and this is how, and that's a mistake I did, and this is what my reflection of the mistakes.
That's a good question. Thank you for answering that, Rajiv. We'll move with speed now. So, And I think some of these are Seintiv team members who are asking questions on behalf of the questions they're receiving directly. So people who are listening, if you're shy of asking a question on the group directly, you can send an email to the email mentioned here, and Rajiv and I would love to respond back to you. We're not charging you for that. Don't worry. Advice, and we would love to give you advice across the mail. You could also DM anyone, any scientific team member, Kriti, Himanshu, anyone, and we'd love to get back to you. If you want to personally DM and not with, like I said, Seintiv has three arms to it. We have got executive search, which is very strong. We work across the globe, and we are a boutique search firm which does some of the most amazing work out there with great clients, small and big, and global capability centers as well. We have leadership coaching side, which focuses on clear leadership transition and coaching for people who are stuck in the career, and we help you get unstuck. And that's career advice we give through a certain set of sessions and conversations. And the third part is human capital consulting, where we focus and work with organizations on their entire trajectory of the human capital piece, from technology to making sure their succession planning or job architecture is taken care of. But coming back to from Seintiv back to what are we talking about today? Navigating your career in uncertain times. There's some amazing questions which have come through. I will take three more questions and we'll call it a wrap after that, because it's we can go on this topic forever. Seintiv Talk focuses on the topics of career advisory. It's a live show which we do every 2 to 3 weeks. So please do join us. We have sometimes external guests as well, like Raajeev. We have people who are great advisors, people who do interviews, senior leaders themselves. So I'd love to respond to you. And if you have any questions, please shoot them to the team member or DM to us, and we'd love to respond back to you, like I said. So coming back to one more question, which is I believe from Arjun. He's got a question from someone. Could you please put that up, please, right now, quickly? Is there such a thing as a career pivot anymore? Is it career now or rolling season small? Beautiful. That's an amazing question. I'll take a quick shot at that, Rajiv, and then maybe you could, who would ask this question, Arjun? Thanks for bringing this up. The career pivot is still there, first of all, right? It is still there. And what means is that where do you want to go? Now, pivot is a big word, right? It could mean that you're doing two different kinds of domain experiences in your career. So like someone moved from doing HR to business, or engineering to finance, and things like that, right? There's a domain shift. That's a huge pivot. So that pivot can also happen in a career, somewhere in the middle or in the early part of a career, or even the later part of a career. But at the same time, today, to your point, it's very relevant. There are a lot of small pivots also happen. And that's such a good question, because small pivots, what it means is, going back to the earlier point, that how are you making sure you are staying relevant to the world at large? And which means is that every now and then, what is a small pivot you're making almost every 2 years in your place, in your workplace, in your job? And if you're in your interview response, people are giving interviews on your CV. When CVs are given to us, we look at that. It helps a lot of people make their CVs and LinkedIn profile, rebrand them, position them in the market. A lot of leaders and mid-career professionals. What my team does is, what they look for, first of all, is what's the brand equity the person has. And the brand equity means is that how many pivots has the person made to this question in their career, right? As in pivots, as in different moves which have added value to the CV, not just one monolith CV which says the same thing, that been this guy and done that. Give an example to that, like a sales guy, for example. If a salesperson in a technology organization, let's say, has had one experience of growing from sales from X to Y to Z and growing sales, that's great. That's a great CV. But the small pivot there could be that the person is actually in that sold or managed to expand an innovative set of things or technologies or organizations, or within the organization gone ahead and developed a market practice of some sort, which can speak well about this individual. We can speak about the POA, the position of authority of this individual. Like Rajiv said, what would you be known for if you're a sales leader of 25 years, right? Or a finance leader or whoever, which profession you are in. So that's very, very important. Get to be known for something, and the pivots help you in that direction. Thanks, Arjun, for asking the question. On behalf of someone, thank you so much. Let's get to the penultimate question for the event today. I have two more very interesting questions. One is, oops, I here it is. For senior leaders in the 50s, it's Rajiv, and beyond. This for you and me, Rajiv. But
Sorry,
senior
can you
leaders,
repeat the question? Sorry.
for senior leaders in the 50s and beyond, what are the real possibilities, challenges, and roadmap for making a successful transition to a new role, or a board position or entrepreneurial position? So a lot of people in the 50s nowadays are trying to make a move to new board roles, to new entrepreneurial positions. They're making a shift. They're getting, not because they're getting stuck. I think sometimes they're getting kind of very jaded or bored, or political organizations are getting too toxic sometimes for people to stay in an organization, and they're saying, I had enough, I made my money, I want to step out, I want not retire but do something more interesting. This is a very good question, Rajiv, and you and I get this very almost every single week
Yeah.
nowadays. So go ahead.
And I think we'll have more of these people, more professionals in the 50s asking this question, because again the disruption in the HR space is really real. So I think again there could be a long drawn answer to this question, but I'll pick up 3 or 4 points which is very important. I think it's a career move at 50 has to be the most meaningful move, provided it comes from the right place. I think to the point Ashu you made, if I'm thinking of a career move because of fear, exhaustion, frustration, bad boss, organization, missed opportunity, I think doing that is not the wise thing to do, because that basically you are shifting the dissatisfaction from one place to the other. I would say that this appears a very philosophical answers, but we've lived through that. I have personally lived through that. I have lived through that, and I'll talk from my experience. And I say this: when you are making two or three things, when you're making a career move at that juncture of your life, at that juncture of life, you have to accept that you are bringing something extremely invaluable. You have the depth of experience, you have the depth of network, and we have said network number of times. You have a depth of perspective and judgment. So you have lots to offer. And hence, your decision is not driven by what will I get, but what will I be able to contribute more. So it's about where you can contribute more to versus what you get. So it's about your contribution versus compensation. So that balance you have to choose very well. And very very important point, which I think we most of us do wrong, because most of us get to the stage, Ashu rightly said, out of frustration. We have reached the ceiling, it's not moving forward, so what to do? The fact is, and I think this links back to my comment I wanted to make the previous question. Careers have to be planned. They don't happen by accident or chance. They have to be planned. They have to be planned, right, I believe, right after the first 5 or 7 years, where you're exploring, you're identifying your place. From there on, you want to plan. And the planning the career of the stage where you get to the point of reaching the ceiling or the 50 has to be done. So very very important is, think that is inevitable, and to reach the inevitable, give yourself at least 2 years runway. Plan for it plan for it so that you can land into that role with confidence. Land so that whether it's an advisory role, whether it is a board role, or it's an entrepreneur or social impact, whatever. I think the fact is, we as professionals, Ashu, at that stage are immensely valuable to contribute. So we should not think that as a step back. It's a step forward in a much more defining way. So I think, as I said, in the want of time, I've tried to see that. But my maybe if I flip this question to you, if I want to make a career move and it's well planned, I know I'm 52, 53. Do you think organizations are willing to hire at that age? You see, you talk to organizations. What do you feel?
That's a very tough and a good question, Rajiv. A lot of people ask that, that are organizations willing to hire? Um, The answer is yes. First of all, organization is still hiring at a 50 to 55 kind of a age. It's not that, in fact, sometimes more as well. Till 54, I think it's, so I don't want to make age as a blocker. I guess what they look for three things, what I clearly hear from CEOs and leaders and boards when they hire at that level, or even business leaders and business heads. One, it's not about the age only. It's also about the how fresh is a person, as in from an energy level, from the abilities, from ability to make a difference, and still has firepower and charge of delivering and bringing something
Definitely.
to the business, right? A tired person, even if he's a person is of 48 years old, is often ignored in interviews. I've seen a lot these days, and people don't prepare well. They don't charge. They don't. They're making a move, forced move, because they're hitting a toxic environment or something else has gone wrong. So I would really request people, if you're applying for a job, first of all, ask yourself why you're applying for the job. You might be hitting 50s or crossing 50s. Please understand that the other person looking for someone who can do the work required of a leader. They're not necessarily always bothered about your age. However, I don't want to deny there's an unconscious bias we do have in the market about people who cross 50. And that's increasingly growing up. And the reason that is happening is partly for two reasons. One is the leaders have not, metamorphed. They've not changed themselves over years, periods of time. So they find themselves, and again, this wall suddenly, where in under restructuring or something shifts, they get bored of doing the same thing over again. Board leaders, BORED, board leaders uh, are easily seen in the organization. That's where the tiredness comes
Yeah.
in. That's the spring the step is lost. So they should understand that it'll get noticed. And that's one thing that shifts. There are a lot of leaders who are even in the 60s, and I know that they look like they're in their early 50s because they're so charged up and they're so out there. They're making a difference and they learn so much. They've added new skills. Sometimes they would shock even a 30-year-old. So that's the second thing. Coming back to how should we approach this? How should, if you're 50 something and all that is right, because it may sound theoretical what me and Rajiv were saying otherwise, how should we approach it practically if you're going for an opportunity in your 50s, right? The way to pivot is to make sure, first of all, what Rajiv said, you're prepared for the entrepreneurial opportunity or that board role much ahead. It doesn't happen in a day. So I use an analogy that, let's say that this is one cliff and there's another cliff, and you're moving from one side to another cliff. What happens is this one is maybe strong today, but this one, if it's not strong, how do you make a move, right? You'll tie a bridge from here to here. So the other cliff needs to become strong before you make that move from this side to this side, right? Imagine like if you're going hiking and if you're a mountain climber or whatever, you're standing on one cliff. It's not a muddy cliff. It's strong, good. You're on firm ground. You'll not fall down. Now you want to go to the other side, put a bridge across. If it's a muddy cliff on that side, your rope will not hold. You'll fall down, right? So crossing the bridge is very tough because there's so many winds. It can be dangerous. You can fall. Your finances may not be in place. A lot of things can go wrong. So make sure that the other cliff is well put there and then tie a rope across. Okay, I hope you understood my analogy. The second part is that, to what Rajiv said earlier, please ensure that three things: your assurance about yourself, that how long can you last without your finances. Second is, how well are you known in the market for what you're going to do. And third is, do you have the knowledge and wherewithal? You may think you have, but sometimes we think we have. We don't have really. So go and challenge yourself. Meet a mentor, meet a guru, meet a expert in that area, and get challenged to see if you're really ready for it. And then make that leap. Please don't do it without that. It will be dangerous. All right. But yes, a lot of people are doing it, and I highly encourage it. It's beautiful. I made it myself. Rajiv has done it. I made a leap in my career in my 50s, and it's worked out beautifully. So as it for Rajiv. We are on the board of organizations, and we advise senior leaders and coaches and coach people. And at the same time, we work with a lot of organizations on their risk strategy or their people matters or the people leadership and things like that. So, with that, I'm going to wrap it up here, Rajiv. It's been an hour, a very rich hour of interesting conversation here. I would invite people to send their questions in, and we love to respond back to you. If you need help in your career, we're here for you. I wish you the very, very best in what you're doing. And Rajiv, over to you to say a few things before we wrap up today.
So thank you again, Ashutosh. I think I really enjoyed the conversation and us talking about some of the issues which is so close to our experiences and heart. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to share that on this platform you provided. So thank you very much, and look forward to future conversations and joining them as an audience or a speaker, wherever. But I'm sure this will be quite enriching. So thank you again.
Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you so much for coming in. And once again, everyone, please send your questions. If you're stuck somewhere, we are passionate to get you unstuck, right? So please do send over your questions, see whatever it is. I can't get you a job. I promise you, I can't get you a job through my network to do tomorrow, but I can open the network for you. But if you really want advice, Rajiv, I and other people can give it to you. We're on the mission to do that. So feel free to reach out. We'll be back with a new show in about 2 weeks from now. Scientific Talk will be aired every 2 weeks, and we love to 2 to 3 weeks, and we'll love to come back to you with your questions on different topics, including your career. Thank you so much, Rajiv.
Thank you.
Once again, really, really glad to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashwin. Bye, everyone.